Ladies and gentlemen, you're rocking with a GOAT. Kenn Dowell giving you motivation for growth. 2 toes down, he keep it realer than most. He do it for the culture, that's always the goal. This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell. This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
Hey, what's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Kenn Dowell. This is a place where I bring art, culture, politics, and business all together, and I do it every Sunday right here on this channel. But when I'm not shooting this podcast, I am the owner of Strategic Resources Consulting, where we specialize in political campaigns, government, and public relations work. Been doing it for 25 years right here in this area and met some very interesting people along the way. And this podcast gives me an opportunity to bring some of them in to share some of our experiences, and hopefully you'll get something out of it that will help you personally or in your business life. So if there's something that you think you're interested in and want to tune in, I want you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell as well, so that you will know the next time we got this program rolling. So today, I got a good friend in my office today. It's a young woman who is running for mayor of the city of Akron. She's a councilwoman, and her name is Tara Mosley. Everybody, let's introduce Tara Mosley to the program. But before we do that, if you don't know anything about Tara and want to know a little bit about her, check out this video we got.
We have an upcoming primary election on Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2023, here in the city of Akron, where we will be electing the next mayor along with city council members. But in order for you to vote on May the 2nd, you have to get registered to vote by April the 3rd, 2023. So remember those dates. You have to be registered to vote if you're not already registered by April the 3rd, 2023. Now keep this in mind. A lot of people have asked about if they have a felony, are they allowed to vote? Yes, you are allowed to vote here in the state of Ohio with the felony. But again, you have to get registered to vote. And again, we will see you all at the polls on May the 2nd, 2023. And if you need more information about your polling location or where you're supposed to vote at, or may need to register online, log on to our website at www.mosleyformayor.com. Again, that's www.mosleyformayor.com. And this is your proud representative, Councilwoman Tara Mosley. You can just call me Tara. We will see you at the polls on May the 2nd.
So everybody, I would like you all to welcome, let's give a warm welcome to Miss Tara Mosley to our program today. There's millions and millions of viewers out there that still witness you. So Miss Councilwoman, welcome to the show. We had a little rough start getting started today, but I want to welcome you and thank you for coming out to our program today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
No problem. You know, I like your commercial. We was just talking about it, and we was talking about you and your dog. What's your dog name?
Langston.
Langston without the leash. I said it. I said it. She walking around that dog with no leash now. You know, you gotta put a leash.
Langston is well behaved.
Langston is well behaved. What kind of dog is Langston?
Langston is a Maltese and Schnauzer. You know, the designer dogs are in now. So he's half and half. Great dog, has his own little following.
Oh.
Langston has his own Instagram.
Really?
Yes, he does.
Okay. All right, Langston. All right. So Langston deserves now. He does what he want to do then.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. He is a pampered dog. I am a dog mom.
Oh, how old is Langston?
Langston is 4.
4 years old. All right, Langston. Well, you know, just be careful with Langston out there while you're out there on that campaign, bro.
Sure.
So, Councilwoman, I wanted to invite you to the program and tell everybody, you know, I meet people along my way of doing business and things of that nature. And I met you during opportunity. I knew of you, but never had an opportunity to work with you. But last year I had an opportunity to do a little program with College Now up here, and they wanted some help in Akron. And we tapped into you to ask you for your help. And you did such a great job on it. I mean, it was that part of that project was the easiest part. I live up here in Cleveland, and we just could not seem to really get this thing done in Cleveland Heights, but you took care of business down there in Akron. And I appreciated that. And I told you I wanted to get you on my show because I like people who can do what they say they can do. And you were one of those folks. So again, thank you for doing that. So I want you to tell our people, like we always do on our program, a little bit about where you come from and your background. You know, are you a native from Akron? Are you born and raised in Akron? So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, born and raised in the city of Akron. Have no desire to live anywhere else but in Akron.
Okay.
And very big family in the city of Akron. Mosley family is pretty big. My great-great-grandfather Dosh originated from Devereaux, Georgia, lived to be 100, married 4 times, had 4 sets of children.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And so our family line is very long, very strong in Akron.
So you got brothers, sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers, 1 sister, but my grandparents had 12 kids.
Oh, okay. Your grandparents had 12 kids. You know, back then they used to have a great big family.
Oh, yeah.
And I think my wife said her grandmother had like 11 or something like that also. Wow.
Yeah. So because of that, I mean, they had this strong connection with the community just based off of just that part of our heritage and my aunts and uncles. My mom, she only had 4 kids, but my aunt had like 10.
Whoa.
So that's the Easter side of my family. So when I talk about I have a huge family in the city of Akron, whether they're Mosley, McWayne, or Barkley, or an Easter, or Watley, it's just so many of us, which is
and they all in Akron.
In Akron. Well, not all of them. Some of them when they migrated up from the South, some of them went to Philly.
Okay.
Some of them went to Michigan, but most of them stayed in Akron. It's always wonderful when I run into somebody and they're like, "You're my cousin." Or I have an officer say, if I was paid $1 every time we pull somebody over and they say that they're related to you, I could retire.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
So yeah, I love my city. I've been there my entire life.
What part of Akron did you grow up in?
East Akron.
East Akron. What is East Akron? Like, because you know we're Clevelanders, and the only time we come to Akron, I used to go to Akron a lot. My daughters played softball, so we used to go down there to the the Goodyear Stadium that's in Akron, softball stadium.
Oh, the Bridgestone over on Main Street for the women.
Yeah, for the women.
So,
so we
just did
to those games
a huge renovation over there for the women's softball tournament. So yeah, they have really did a great job over there. I was a softball player in high school as well.
Okay.
Yeah, junior high and high school.
Really? What position you play?
I was shortstop, center fielder, and relief pitcher.
Really? Oh, so you pitched a little bit. Yeah. All my daughters was pitchers.
Yeah, that's a unique position.
I got a soft spot for softball players.
That's a strong position to be in.
That's cool.
So relief, as I said, relief pitcher.
So how was it growing up in Akron? You went to high school and school down there. Was it rough growing up in Akron? Akron wasn't that bad, right? Well, hold on. I don't want to cut you off because I be getting bits and pieces. You guys had 2 schools down there, right? Was it Bookville?
Or no? High schools?
High schools.
No, we have more than that. We have North. We have East, we have Bookville, we have Firestone, we have Central Howard. Central Howard is now the math and science school. It's the STEM school for the smart kids go to Central Howard now. So they grabbed all of them from all over the city and they stuck them all in one school. And so I graduated from Central Howard in 1989. But I mean, Akron, you know, Akron has is struggles like every other city does. During the time when I was in school, high school wasn't. You know, everybody talks about these great times they had in high school. Mine were in junior high. But when I got in high school, I had a baby when I was in 10th grade.
Really?
Yes. So I was a mom early. I had responsibilities. So I didn't get to hang out with the kids and do all the things that they were all doing. I did play basketball my sophomore year and got pregnant and, you know, I had to do things a little differently. By the time I was a senior, I had 2 kids.
Oh, senior in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so now you done changed the complexity of my story here. Okay.
So, you know, it was just different for me. So when, by the standards of which people judge people being in these seats, you wouldn't think I would even be here because, you know, life for me was a little different than most legislators who serve in these positions. It was a struggle to get out of school. Right. I tell this story very eloquently in my book when I talk about those teachers, those who poured into me and the ones who looked down on me. And the ones who poured into me are the only reason I believe that I was able to get out of school.
Wow.
Those who would say to me, they were surprised I even came back to school.
Wow.
they were my motivators though,
Right.
because I remembered that. And I tell my daughters that story all the time. And one of the teachers who actually told me that ended up being my daughter's high school gym teacher.
Whoa.
Imagine that.
Wow.
And so I say, it's funny how things come full circle. And so I use those moments to really, really, inspire me. And when I'm talking to other young parents, whether they're moms or dads, and I tell them that story, and I was like, your dreams are not denied, they're just deferred. And sometimes you just have to take a different route. I took a different route. It's okay to do that. I've always knew this is what I wanted to do with my life. It just took me a little longer to get there because I had a family.
So you had a family coming out of high school.
I got married the first time very young. And so it was about family for me. I had all 4 of my kids by the time I was 23.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm in college. Some days I would have to take my son to school with me. And I had professors who were nice enough to allow me to bring him with me. And I would sit in the back of the class just so I could get my notes. And, he would sit there quietly. My daughters were all in school, but he was still, a toddler. So it was a little different for me.
A little different. Yeah. So did you graduate high school?
Oh, yeah.
So you actually marched the stage of high school.
So this is what high school, I really, really want to tell your listeners too. I have a book out and it's called From Teen Mom to Public Servant.
Okay.
And I really, especially my younger parents, especially those who, sometimes they have those challenges and they feel like no one believes in them. If I don't even know you, I'm going to tell you I believe in you because I was that person. So when I was, I remember this day, and I talked about this on one of the other shows I was just on. I said, I remember that day we were all seniors and they started calling all these names over the PA. And we get downstairs, it's an office full of a lot of the same girls, because when I was pregnant the second time, they encouraged us to go to the Teenage Parent Center. They didn't want us in the high school. They had a school for pregnant
I remember
moms.
Yeah.
So that's where they sent us. And so we were sitting in the office and our counselor came out and says, I'm sorry, you guys aren't going to be able to walk the stage. I need to send you all to summer school. And so we're all sitting there like, what? One of the girls refused. She said, I'm not staying here. She went and I don't know how she did it, but she went and talked to all these professors I wasn't short credits. They actually put me in an art class when I should have been in an algebra class. So she padded our schedules with classes that we didn't even need. So when it came time to looking, it's like, well, she needs algebra. So we were stuck in summer school at the Teenage Parent Center. They had some little cake and punch party, and here's your diplomas, go on your way. To me, it was so disrespectful because there was a young man who was on his way to the military and he was short of credit, but they still let him walk the stage. They didn't let none of these girls walk.
And you wasn't short credits, and they just a
freaking drawing and design class.
Wow.
Drawing and design class. And then I remember telling my parents this, and I was just so upset about it. And my mom, I remember her, I love my mom, God rest her soul. She was like, just get over it and go through the class. And it hurt because I wanted her to go to that school and I wanted her to go off because darn it, I did what I was supposed to do. And, but I think it really, really shaped me, and it really showed me how this system really don't care about certain people. It just really doesn't, because but for that moment, I probably wouldn't have the fight in me that I have, and it's given me a really thick skin because of it. I saw one of the girls, Jaleisha, she was one of the ones that got sent to summer school with me one day. Years later, we've been out of high school 34 years. And she said, you remember that day we were in the office and we talked about that?
So you remember that.
And we talked because it was a hurtful moment for all of us. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to champion the cause for all of us in the office. And I'm being the most vocal one, but it hurt. And I was just like, dang, they really didn't. To me, it was like their moms, they're not going to finish. They're not going to do anything with themselves. Why even bother with them? And it just gave me the motivation. After I finished summer school, I just went on and just went and got a job, and I worked for a little while, and I finally signed up to go to school because by that time I was gotten married, and I signed up to go to Akron U. So, going to Akron U, And being a parent of 4 children at the time, it was tough.
So I was going to ask you, did you go when you had all 4 kids decide to go back to school, or you decided to go in between?
I didn't go. I had already had all my kids.
Okay.
We had gotten married. So at that point, it was about, we need to work. We got kids to take care of. And then finally, after I had my son, I was like, I want to go to school.
Okay.
So then signed up, went to the University of Akron, stayed till like my junior year. And it was just all of these. Why am I in this stats class? Why am I in this? This is not what I'm in school for. So I ended up transferring out and going to the Academy of Court Reporting because I knew that's what I wanted to do, to be a paralegal. So I could work in a law firm. And that's what I did. While I was at I worked for the post office.
Okay.
And I just remember sitting there one day and I was like, I just don't want to be that postal worker everybody talks about. Oh, they're going to go postal. I mean, literally the post office that I worked in, I was a DCO. Which is a data conversion operator. And the facility I worked in, all we did was we would see mail come across computers and we would sort it to whatever state it was going to. The week that I went on vacation was a week that I was trying to find me another job. One of the guys they had forced to retire. It was on the news. They forced him to retire. He came back to the facility with a gun.
Really?
And made the supervisor strip down in front of everybody in the facility and walk the floor.
Wow.
And I said, I knew it was the reason why I was supposed to go on vacation. I mean, he went to prison and everything because of it.
Wow.
And I sent out all these letters to all these law firms, just trying to see if they would give me an opportunity. And only one law office called me back. And that was attorney Ed Parms.
Wow. And
he was a civil rights attorney.
Oh, so that's probably what gave you the bug, I bet.
It was there, but he just lit the fire for me.
So you were a paralegal with him?
I was a paralegal and I was the office manager for him at his law firm. And he did a lot of civil rights work. And I remember one day they had this article in the paper about one of the private schools there. It was an all girls private school. And but the picture they had in the paper, there were no Black girls in the picture. And it just burned him up. He was on fire about it. So he was like, I need you to write this letter for me. So I'm sitting there and I'm transcribing the letter. And he gets to say these pointed things like, why is your school lily white? And I was like, what? Huh? You want me to write that? Right. And he's like, write it. So I'm just typing away and I'm writing it. And I was like, ooh, it ended up on the front page of the paper.
Wow.
His letter to them ended up on the front page of the paper. And I would write those letters for him every now and then when he wasn't in the courtroom. And one year we decided to have these Christmas parties and my parents showed up. I was like, oh, my parents are going to come. I was so excited about my parents coming. My mom and dad get off the elevator and I introduced my parents to him and he just cracked up laughing. He said, I guess I need to watch what I see around you, huh? And I was like, my dad would probably feel the same way you did here. Right. This white Irish guy gets off the elevator with my Black mom. And he was just thinking like, I've got this girl in here writing these letters.
Wow. So your dad is Irish. Whoa, now you gotta skip us back. You like tell a story. So, all right, so we gotta go back to the neighborhood. So you grew up, you had a Irish dad and a Black mama.
So that story in itself is my parents were married right after the Loving versus Virginia decision. My dad was in the military.
Okay.
So whenever my mom would go visit my dad, he was stationed at Fort Bragg.
Right.
And whenever she would go visit him, she was not allowed on the base.
They made a movie about that, didn't they? Yeah.
She was not allowed on the base, and the bus driver would never drop my mom off close to the base because he feared for her safety. So whenever my dad would want to visit my mom, he would have to go to the hotel and visit her off base, or they would go and meet somewhere, go hang out where, but she was never allowed on the base. I never understood that till I got older when my parents passed away not too long ago. And I found this like a big old luggage, like one of those makeup bags full of all of these love letters that my mom and dad had written back and forth to each other when they were in the military. I'm going to figure out a way to get them published. Talk to my siblings first, but their love story is just so beautiful. And I always would ask, I said, why would you never let me go? And my dad said, it was almost like they were feared for my safety, but I was almost like, don't talk about this part of our life because you never know what may happen. And so reading through those letters, I found a letter that came from the United States. I don't know if it was the military branch or it was one of the upper levels of the military where they were talking about the discrimination that was going on the different bases. And my dad had put in for a transfer. He actually wanted to be transferred to Alaska. because of the racism. So I found that and I was like, I can only imagine how that was for them and what they dealt with, because my dad went to South High School, which was an older high school in Akron, but my dad was only one of like 3 or 4 white people who went to South. It was a predominantly Black high school.
Wow.
And so my dad and my mom would go to games together. And my dad, you have to really love somebody to put up with what my mom and dad put up with. They were fighting all the time. My mom would jump in a fight in a minute if somebody wanted to fight my dad for being with my mom. That my mom was.
So they were
my mom was Angela Davis. My mom was Angela Davis.
Wow.
I'll tell you.
Wow.
And I love their love story. I just love it because it just really shows that when you really love somebody, all that other outside noise you can work through, and it is probably harder for him than it was for my mom.
You know, we grew up in our neighborhood where I grew up in. It was in that position of the community changing, and I think you're from what I can hear from your dad, he probably was part of that, where the community started to change when more and more Black folks moved into the community, and more of the white people moved out of the community. But then there were them white folks who were stuck there, who wasn't moving. They were there, their family bought houses there, or they got them, or just wasn't in no position to move. So they lived among Black people, and they were cool. You know what I mean? And you will see the white dude who will be dating a sister all the time. And wouldn't be afraid of it, and would, just like you say, willing to fight about it and everything, because they grew up in the community of that.
Well, my dad's family, my grandmother, she had kids by a Black man. She had white kids. She had biracial kids. So it was probably even worse for her than it was for my parents, because here she was with these biracial children, but then she had the white set of kids. And it's so funny because I remember those days where, certain people in that side of the family, they had no love for us.
Right. I can imagine.
No love for us. It was none of that. It was, no, you're not coming over here for a family function. None of that. My mom was jazzy though. So my mom, she would tell you just how it was and how it is and how it should be. And you didn't have to like it, but you were going to hear about it. And so it's a beautiful story to tell for sure.
So tell me, so I imagine you was working for this attorney for a little while, and that got you into understanding a lot of, like you say, he was doing civil rights things. So what got you into wanting to get into politics from there?
It wasn't even from him. He really he opened up the door to the community to make sure that I knew these are the elected officials. These are the people I need to get you in the room with. But the very first race I ever worked on, I was 17 years old. And it was Dean Young. He was running for judge. And I would cold call people about his fundraisers, his dogs and suds. And that was the very first one I worked on. And the reason I remember him is because he would be in the parades riding on a horse.
Really?
And I just was so fascinated by he's running for judge and he's on a horse.
All right.
That's a different kind of thinking right there. So I wanted to just do whatever I could. And so when I went finally to work for Attorney Parms, he introduced me to Judge Annalisa Williams. She was getting ready to take position as a female Black judge. It just opened up a door for me that has just been a forever door. And Judge Williams and I am like her little sister to this day. And I've been able to work on a lot of those campaigns for a lot of those. I worked on mostly judicial campaigns because I always felt like, don't wait till you get in trouble to find out who the judges are. And that always bothered me. Like when people are like, well, who's the judge? I'm like, don't you vote?
Right.
I mean, that's the position we in our community need to know who's there. And so I always worked on those campaigns were the most important to me. And that's where I really laid my stake. And then I just worked hard until Barack Obama ran for office, and I was neighborhood team leaders for him. I actually received the Democratic Chairs Award for my work I did on his campaign.
Oh,
yeah. And that was when he ran the first time, when it was like, who's this guy think he is? And
nobody thought he was going to win.
No. And we were all in for, we were just me. And it was like Tom Sawyer was having these meetings for him. And we were just like all in for him. And we kept saying, he's going to win.
Right.
Nobody believed us. No one believed us. And then when he did win, it was just like, okay, here we are. Just do this. Let's win. And so when he ran for re-election, I ended up being one of his, I was one of his delegates.
Okay.
And so I was able to go to the DNC and really see everything in action. So that was
wonderful. So you had a chance to go out there and hang out with everybody and do that thing. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So what made you want to run for council?
I was always going to run. I was always going to run. So fast forward from working at Attorney Parham's office, I worked for an attorney who ran for judge. He ran against an incumbent, a strong incumbent. He lost, but he was given the appointment. At that time, we had a Democratic governor, and he was appointed. And so I went over as his bailiff. So once I became his bailiff on re-election, it's funny how we can't do what other people do. And I say that as politely as I can. The judge that I worked for at that time, he had a DUI back when he was like in college, and he brought that up and made it seem like he had just had it yesterday. And it tanked his campaign. It tanked his campaign. But we had another sitting council person at that time who got in trouble for DUI, driving a city car. Didn't even bother. But him tanked his campaign, lost his campaign. But another judge was like, I want to bring her over as my bailiff because the way she keeps that courtroom running, I just want to bring her with me. So I ended up going to work for her. I worked for her until I decided to run. I went to her and I said I wanted to run. And she says, okay, you can run. And I ran first time out the gate. We knocked on over 5,000 doors.
But what inspired you? Why?
I wanted to see something different for our community.
Was there somebody run? Did you run against somebody?
Oh yeah, I ran against the incumbent. I ran against the incumbent.
And why did you want to run it? What was it that you thought the incumbent was just there too long? New ideas? What was it that made you felt that you wanted to run?
For me, I felt as if there were certain parts of the ward that weren't being taken care of because the ward was so big. It crossed the entire city of Akron. It had north side, part of downtown, all the east side, and parts of the South Akron. So it touched every part of the city except for West Akron. And so there was a part of the city, they just said, we don't never see him. He doesn't come. He doesn't respond to us. We don't see him. And I mean, I'm not one to run against incumbents.
I understand.
I just felt like
you could do better.
Yeah, I could do better. I could do better. And so I ran on, we wanted a council person who would take care of the whole entire ward, not just the part where he lived at. And we just kept knocking those doors. And I actually went into his neighborhood. I said, I'm going to start in his neighborhood and I'm going to work my way east because the east side was my family. I knew I was starting 138 votes ahead of whoever ran because that was my family. So I was like, oh, I got that bank. So now I need to go over here and convince these people where he lives, where he's grown up, that I'm the best person for the job. Some of them weren't receptive to that because they looked at it like this is our hometown person. And I got that, but I made the case for myself where people started saying, she got a point. She's got a point.
So how long have you been in office?
9 years.
Jeez, okay.
9 years.
9 years. So this is 9 years ago you took him out.
Yeah.
All right. And tell me some of your big accomplishments you most proud of.
So I pride myself on being able to say in my 9 years around that horseshoe, I have brought in more pieces of original legislation than a lot of people around that body who have been serving in double digits. And that's because, I went and I listened to the residents and I knew what was going on in these neighborhoods in the community, not just in Ward 5 that I represented, but because across the city, because people would call me and say, hey, did you know this was going on? Did you know this was going on? So one of the signature pieces of the legislations that I brought in that I'm most proud of is our live streaming. And that was met with a lot of opposition. I wanted us to live stream our council meetings. I thought it was important that we be transparent and that the residents know what we were doing with their tax dollars. They fought against it. So I sent it back to the law department. I tweaked a couple things and I said, let us sit for a little bit. Let us sit. Because I wanted to give them time to think about it. But in that time, me being who I am, I bought my iPad to council and I started live streaming the meetings from my desk. And they were not happy. They went to the law department. They wanted me to stop live streaming. I was Facebook living it. And they were so upset. And the law department said, there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do. And so I said, they were so upset, but they saw how hundreds of people had started watching and questioning, why don't y'all want to live stream? And then I brought the legislation back in and it passed 9-4. Wow.
Do y'all do where public can come in?
Oh yeah, that was a charter amendment. Someone else brought that in. They get 3 minutes to speak. That in itself has been something for us. It's been something, but it was needed. Another piece of legislation I brought in, and it's an actual law, city ordinance in the city of Akron, was I was able to get the Crown Act passed in the city of Akron. for hair discrimination.
I was about to say that hair, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was able to get that passed. And I was really surprised. Other people were like, we got bigger things to worry about. I said, no, Black people are actually getting fired, especially Black women, for their hair, or told not to wear their hair a certain way. And that's discriminatory. So if you're telling me that I can't, that it's wrong for someone to discriminate against you for whatever lifestyle you're living, my hair should have just as much equal say in that. So that was very important for me. I was able to get the dash camera legislation passed for all the police officers. Now will have dash cameras in their police vehicles.
That's recent.
Just recently. And a lot of that, what happened with Jalen Walker played a part with me being able to get it passed, but I actually had been talking to the chief about it prior to what happened with Jalen, because 2 of my nephews were killed on Easter because the police was chasing them and they lost control of the car. And the car went down into a ravine and they drowned because they couldn't get out of the car.
This was in Akron?
It was on the news.
Really?
Yeah. 2 of my nephews and one of their friends on Easter.
Last Easter,
yeah.
Oh, we haven't had Easter yet, have we?
All right, it hasn't even been a year. Wow. It hasn't been a year. So our question to them was, what happened?
Right.
We want to know what happened. First of all, why are you stopping them on Easter? Were they speeding? What was the point? It's Easter Sunday. And whatever happened, we'll never know, because the officers got out of the cars and they took off to get away from them. And we, to this day, don't know why. And I said, at least if the dash cameras would have been there, we would at least know what led up to the stop, what led up to it, because clearly there was no chase prior to them taking off. But what happened to them has happened before in other instances where people was like, well, what's the dash camera footage show? What happened to dash cameras? We had dash cameras a long time ago, but they were old, they were antiquated. You had some officers that would make them malfunction on purpose by pouring coffee down in them.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And so when I challenged them on that, I said, make a liar out of me then, because I know it's true. Because remember, I was a bailiff in the courthouse where the police station is. So a lot of the things that were going on, I knew because other police officers were telling me. I wasn't just reaching and grabbing pie out of the sky. A lot of the things that I know and have combated against is because other officers, Black and white, have come and told me. And so I challenged them on, this is how you do better. You be better by doing this and not doing that. And so, it's played a part in some of the reason why I may not be their fan favorite.
Well, yeah.
Hey, what's up? We're going to hear more from Councilwoman Mosley, but right now what I need you to do is hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment to let us know how we're doing, and if you think you know someone that'd be interested in coming on our show, then you can do that as well. See, it's really just that simple. Now let's get back to Councilwoman Mosley.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because we're gonna agree to disagree if we have to, and that's good. That makes good podcasting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of getting to this point, and we're going to go into this. You got some issues down there in Akron we're going to talk about. But the police and people running from the police and everything that's going on with that, I think that society right now, we're going through a crazy time, as everybody can say, oh, yeah, it's crazy. But the crazy part that I want to focus on is that we got to be careful that the criminal element is huge.
Yes.
The criminal element in the streets is much bigger than any element out there. And what I mean by that is the criminal mindset of the people that survives in the streets. It's different than your thinking, my kids' thinking. It's a totally different element. And what I think we have to be careful is that we're getting to a point where people are running from the police that may have good reason to run, because some of these cops are really crooked cops and doing some bad stuff out there, as we've seen recently. But then we also opening it up for the criminal to also say, I'm running because I'm scared, but he's not running because he's scared. He's running because he got dope on him. He's running because he's running from something. He's doing something, and we're catching this at the back end with our phones and everything else, with the police to maybe chase this guy 20 blocks and tired. And May is laying on this guy or something, because I'm trying to hold him down, to keep him down. But it is just all getting out of control. And we're just at that point where I just don't know how we get through that. And just to jump a little bit, it's going to be really hard for you as the new mayor to be running to juggle that as mayor, because you have a police department that you want to do its job. but you don't want to be the person that's making it seem as if you anti-police.
Right.
You see what I mean? So that we open it up for the criminal element, which is the biggest element in our community, to play a game on that, because they will look at that and be like, I'm running. And you run and be like, why are you chasing? When you look at the police pulling weapons out of them, they pulling this out of them. Well, you shouldn't have been running. What you mean? You know, we looking at them like, get off of him. Like, y'all just don't know what's happening here. And I think that we got to be careful with that. So what are your thoughts on everything going on? We're going to go on and get right to it then. Right. You got all this stuff in Akron. Right. You had the Jalen Walker case that happened down there. You had police officers that were going in. You talked about it in your actual community on tape, pulling down posters off of the walls of saying people who were protesting. I think the gentleman who died was out there, a white gentleman, if I remember, who was out there.
Put him up.
He was putting them up and very supportive of what was going on with that and supporting him, and the police were taking it down. So you want to run for mayor? You got it. You've been around. How you gonna deal with that?
So I think it first starts with, we have to first rebuild the trust and the relationships between the community and the police. And it's fractured. It's very fractured. So we definitely have to do that. And how do we do that? For me, I truly believe that we need our community officers back in the neighborhood. They need to be doing park and walks. There was a time when they called them beat cops. They would be on the bicycles in our neighborhoods. You don't see that anymore. We have our neighborhood response team, and they've just changed their title. It's like community engagement team. They've changed the acronyms, but all that is well and good. And yes, we do have those young men and women who they see police and they do have a fear, and we have to
genuine.
Be honest about that fear that a lot of them are feeling based off of the things that are now being recorded. And I said, these things didn't just start yesterday. They're just being recorded, but that doesn't mean all officers are like that. A majority of them are good officers. It's the ones that aren't that is making bad for the good ones. And now we want the good ones to speak up and not have the fear of retribution. When you know you got a bad officer in your rank and file, that all spills over to you when you're out here doing your job. Like, for instance, we have an officer in Akron, Officer Lloyd Ford, beloved, retired officer Sylvia Tronto, beloved. They love these officers. I want all officers to be like that. Will we get all officers like that? We won't. But you want to make sure that you're intentional when you're in the hiring process, so that you can see those things that may be a concern to you before they get there. And now you've got to try to figure out how to deal with when a Jalen Walker situation happens. How do we do that? Well, I think that the first thing we need to do, we need to be more intentional about hiring officers who actually live in the neighborhood, live in the community, look like the community. Now, we got billboards all the way up here in Cleveland to hire officers in Akron. Why is that?
You probably having the same issue they having in Cleveland trying to get officers. Are you guys, or you guys are doing better than we are?
We are definitely doing better than Cleveland. Definitely doing better.
Because they can't find no cops up here.
We are definitely doing better than Cleveland.
Maybe the cops are trying to go to Akron after they graduate here.
For me, I just think that we just have to do a better job of recruiting from home. But you got to make them want to be an officer, especially when you say you want a police department that actually looks like the community. Akron is between 34% African-American out, Black, but the police department doesn't look like that. And with this drop program, a lot of those officers are getting ready to retire. And most of the it'll be like 6-7% Black. After they always going to be bad. The drop program was a lawsuit that happened that was able to get these officers hired in, minority Black officers. And so what I think needs to happen is, and the things that I have in my platform outside of, yes, we got to work on the community engagement. I truly believe we need to have substations in our neighborhoods, especially when we're talking about those red zone areas where we have a high crime rate and a crime index. We can't expect new businesses to move here if we can't get our crime index down. Who's going to do that? Nobody in their right mind is going to move to a community where first you can't get people to want to work, and then the crime index is out of control. So we got to work on that part of it. But when we sit and we talk about all of these elements to hiring a police officer, they need to look like the community, be of the community, but we need to get rid of that maximum age requirement. Get rid of it, because eventually someone's going to sue us for ageism. No one's 60 wants to be a police officer. No 60-year-old is coming in there to take police officer tests, just get rid of it. However, in talking to our chief Miley, he said in his other position, he hired a guy that was 55 years old, the winner to pristine shape. And the thing about that is that older person, because they have that experience, that life experience, they just look at things a lot differently than a younger officer would. And I truly believe that if there were older officers, when Jalen Walker's situation happened, I think there might, I can't say for sure, but I truly believe that there was a more seasoned officer. I think that there may have been a different reaction than the action that happened. And so the getting rid of that, but making sure that we are not looking at an officer and saying, or a candidate, a potential candidate, and saying, have you ever smoked marijuana? And of course, instantly, if they look like us, even if they don't look like us, they probably smoked marijuana at some point in their life. So now they're faced with, do I lie or do I say yeah? Because either one you say, you're out. Anyway. You're out. So why does that even matter? You're saying once they become a police officer, you can't get high. You can't smoke weed if you want to be an officer, but it has to go twofold. Ask them if they're using steroids, if they ever use steroids. If you're going to ask about marijuana, ask about steroids, because here, steroids makes you angry, makes you aggressive. Marijuana does not. So just take the marijuana off the table, and then you'll have more buy-in, and don't make credit a factor in that. If somebody has bad credit, but you know they have the potential to be a great officer, work with them, have them go through some kind of credit counseling services to help them get their credit where it needs to be. Now, we ain't talking about fraud, where they went and opened a whole bunch of accounts and defaulted on them. We're talking about help them get their credit restored, but don't make these deciding factors as why they should or should not be.
Well, we know the biggest factor in getting your credit restored is a job. Hey, if I got money to pay my bills, I ain't paying. The only reason why I ain't paying my bills is because I don't have no money.
And so when we look at some of the recruiting that they've done, we had these posters where they made it cool that if you got tattoos, you could be an Akron officer. Well, I don't care about tattoos. How much do they make? It should be about the fact you're coming in the door making $63,000, and you'll see a lot more of these young people who will actually sign up. But you got to also make sure that they have the same fair advantage as the other officers. There needs to be a pre-test, like if you're going to take the LSAT, have them sit and have them have practice sessions, have them do all of that. So when it comes time to take that test, they actually have a fighting chance to pass the test. And that usually is where you lose a lot of them, is when they're taking that test.
Really?
Yeah, the test has been probably the biggest issue. And then they get to the drug testing issue, and then they make the offer. And then they do the psychology part of it, which should be done in the beginning. That was one of the things when I chaired Reimagining Public Safety, I chaired personnel and culture. And I said, why would you wait to the end to check to see if somebody is mentally stable?
Because, by that time, you almost ready to just give them in there. They done been through all of that.
They've been through all of it.
You might as well, if you know they crazy in the beginning, ain't no point in you even doing any of this other stuff.
In the beginning of it, you have that conversation, and by having that conversation, if they're going to be fit. Don't wait until you've done all this paperwork. You done took them through all of this agility testing, and now they think
because you're trying to make them fit
at
that point. Because if they passed all of that, you say, well, he's athletic, he's this, he that, maybe he just got he wasn't feeling good today. You know what I mean? And those are the ones that's squeaking through. So that's a valid point.
So I think that we have to be very intentional when we talk about the front part of that, and that's the hiring practices, and making sure those relationships are there, making sure that all of our officers are CIT trained, because they need to know how to deal with somebody that is having a mental health issue in an episode at that moment, and 1 in 4 person has a mental health issue. And so when you're dealing with someone, I don't want to have to wait until a CIT officer comes on scene because little Johnny is having an issue. All the officers should be trained, and that means you got to have an in-service day at maybe Johnny's Night down in Akron, and everybody's trained. That should be mandatory. It shouldn't be one of these, I want to be in a gun violence unit. I want to be in the meth unit. This should be a part of the process, because we just live in a different time. COVID exposed a lot, and it showed that a lot of people are really struggling mentally, and then that addiction component is there because of that mental health component. And so making sure that they are able to deal with those segments in our community is going to be very paramount to repairing those relationships and making sure that instances like Jalen Walker never happens again.
So on that Jalen Walker thing, I know you guys are doing a consent decree down there now, correct? No? You guys are putting together a board.
That's a citizens review board.
Excuse me. That's what it is. We have a consent decree.
You guys have we get to that point. Hopefully that will not ever happen under my administration.
Right. Now that's what I was about to get into. So you got a citizen review board, which is similar to the other thing that we just passed, issue 24, I think, or 25, one of those. So the citizen review board, is that something that you're involved in, and what's your view on that, and how is that working?
So that was issue 10. And I was a strong supporter of issue 10.
Okay.
And one of the things that I really stressed was this is not about saying that officers are bad. This is about making sure that we have a transparent process is what we needed, because there's no trust there. And most of the officers were fine with it. You have a couple of them was like, we'll just hold it up in collective bargaining. I said, but see, here we go again. So now you're doing a disservice to the community. Why even come to the table? And that's the first thing out of your mouth is we'll just hold it up in collective bargaining. And I was like, no, this is about if there's an incident that happens and we're just trying to strengthen our community relations between the police and the community, issue 10 is going to do that. So now we've gotten past that part. It passed by 60%.
So people who watch our show, we assume and know everything we're talking about. Explain to them, what is the Citizen Review Board?
So the Citizens Review Board, it's a board that is going to be comprised of citizens of Akron. The way it's set up is there's components to that have to be met. And this board will, look at and oversee some of the issues and complaints that come about the police. And having a conversation about how do we make that better for the community and for the police officers to be able to function in their daily. This is not a review board that's coming in and overstepping what the FOP does and saying we want them fired. We make a recommendation. This is recommendations.
You make a recommendation. Yeah.
And so right now on Monday, we will be voting on those individuals that we would like to see appointed to the board. Now, one of them, they're given some pushback on, a young man named Emokai. Brilliant young man, brilliant African-American young man, attorney, only 27 years old. He checks so many of the boxes. It's hard to deny him being on there. So he originally was supposed to be the Ward 5 pick, my pick. Well, once they went back and looked at the lines, they realized he's not in Ward 5, he's in Ward 3. So Councilwoman Somerville decided she would take him and he could be her pick. And so we had a couple other council members was like, no, we don't want him to be the pick, even though these are individuals who actually sat on the review committee. Once it came to the floor, they were taken aback that once they found out he was in a different ward, why was he still even considered? I said, well, if the Ward 3 person is saying this is who they want, when did we not follow the lead of the ward person when there's an issue in their ward? Like, what are we doing here? And I mean, I could understand what Councilman Kamer said. He had a problem with the fact that they dropped it in his lap that day when they were sitting here going through the committee and the process of interviewing. He felt like that should have been discussed on that end, not dropped in their lap on Monday, which this administration has a habit of doing that, unfortunately. And that's where his concern came in. But two of the other councilmen, they just don't want him on there at all, period. It doesn't matter. And I said, okay, so you don't want this young man who checked a lot of the boxes of requirements, very strong, very opinionated, will be honest, and he's an attorney. He checked all the boxes. And so because of the way that the legislation, the charter is written, we have to have a majority, a simple majority for him to even be appointed. So we have 13 council members. 9 of them have to vote yes for him to be positioned on the review board. The mayor's 3 picks, he only needed 7.
Okay.
So his 3 will go through because he already has 7 votes. So 7 votes, everybody knows they're always going to vote for the mayor. But the 9 is where it gets problematic. And I'm still trying to understand why there had to be a difference between the 2. I just think
they got somebody else?
They had a police officer, a retired police officer, and I think that's what they're upset about. But there's already a retired police officer who is being appointed on the mayor's side. He's a retired police officer from Canton, but now he's a Metro bus driver.
Okay.
So he's going to check that police officer box because they have to be retired. They can't be a current police officer.
Okay.
Can't work for the city at all. Can't be on there if you any one of those components. So they tried to make it in our paper about a Mokai would be taking the place of a police officer, and that's not true.
It's not true.
That's not true. And so there's 8 votes for him. There's still a holdout on the 9th vote. So I don't know what happens if we don't get 9 votes for him, because it's not explicitly written as to what happens. And I even said, well, do we have residual candidates just in case someone doesn't want to serve or they decide that this is just too much for them? We've got a little bit of work to do before we have a vote on Monday.
Do y'all have a serious a deadline of when this has to be in place?
Yeah, we have to vote on Monday.
So Monday is the day it's supposed to be done.
To vote, yeah. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens. It would be unfortunate if they don't vote Mokai onto that review board, because his viewpoint of this community and how things should be moving forward. He works for one of the biggest law firms in the country, and his law firm is okay with him being there. He actually does a lot of pro bono work helping individuals who are being wrongfully evicted. This is what he does in his spare time. Great kid. And I said, it's unfortunate that, it seems like whenever it becomes anything about race within our horseshoes, what we call our council, the horseshoe, it always becomes problematic. It's always an issue that we deal with.
Oh, well, that's an issue everywhere. It's an issue everywhere. I mean, it's getting more and more obvious now, exactly more and more obvious. I mean, what you think is the biggest issue of Akron? If the residents of Akron was to say, we got a couple of, these are our 2 biggest issues that you think the community is looking for right now out of its leaders.
They want to know that their voices is being heard. There's a lot of lip service, but then when it comes down to actually having input from the residents and letting them be involved in the process, there's never any of that. For instance, we just had an issue with the White Pond Reserve. There's a developer who's trying to build on wetlands, and the environmentalists not having it, rightfully so. But it was another one of those things where they put the cart before the horse. Let's vote on the zoning, and then we're going to slide this housing development in after that really quickly. And the environmentalists picked up on it, and they're just like, well, wait a minute, we can't even have a meeting about this. So they want input. They want to be heard before we make big decisions that are going to affect our community. Of course, political stomp speech, public safety, top of the list, housing, economic development and job creation, mental health and addiction. Those are all of the components that I am running on because they are important to us, but everything has to start from the bottom up. If we do not deal with the mind of a person, the mental health of a person, the addiction going on in our community, which is really, really terrible right now. In area code 44306, which is East Akron, we have the highest suicide and overdose rate of Black men.
Really?
Highest in the city. The 2022 was just terrible for a young Black man in Akron. The overdoses is just out of control right now. Suicide.
Is it suicide or is it overdose?
No, both. Because suicide, most of them are committing suicide with guns.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The struggle is there. And I think the biggest issue within our community is we don't want to talk about it. If you talk about it, then it becomes, oh my God, people are going to think I'm crazy. It's not about thinking you're crazy. It's about going and getting the help and talking to somebody so you don't feel like this is the end all be all and taking your life.
So how do you translate that message into a message that, because when I asked the question, just like you said, you gave me the answer of an activist, which is good. And because you say, the stump speech, safety, blah, blah, which is, that's what I was looking for. But you answered it the way you did. That's the real issue. All right. People does want service. They do want safety. They want better schools. But we're dealing with a lot of other issues that are really the root of a lot of the problems that we're having.
Yep.
How do you get people to buy into that as an elected official to be able to win a campaign?
I think you just have to be honest with them. And I think it's all about being able to relate And I do believe that I am the most relatable candidate in this race. I come from those neighborhoods where the struggle is happening at. You know, I don't come from privilege. I have busted my butt for everything that I have and everything that I want. I'm working hard for it. I think they want somebody who understands, who has an addiction issue. I've lived it out loud in front of everybody. My son has a severe mental health issue that turned into an addiction issue. So I have those conversations with my residents because I want them to know I understand, because I have lived it every day since my son was 9 years old. I've lived it. He's 29 now. We live it every day. And it just depends on what day he's having. They want to know that you get it. They want to know that you understand when they say there's no housing here, or I'm houseless, or I'm facing eviction. I understand that because I was that mom. I was a young mom trying to make a way for my kids. And that resonates with them. They know that I know that their house needs to be fixed up because I lived in that neighborhood. We still live in the house that my parents built 24 years ago. And our houses are falling down around us, and they want their houses fixed up. They don't want somebody to come through here and say, we're about to build a new development, but what about us? We've been here for 30, 40, 50 years. What about our house? What about our roof? What about our electrical? What about, they deserve that. And they want somebody who actually understands that. And I truly believe that I'm the person who understands and get it because I've lived it.
So let me ask you a couple of things, and we're going to get you out of here.
I'm having fun now.
The one thing I want is the schools down there. The schools have been one of the big subjects that was going on. You guys just got your teacher signed their contract and everything. And, on the news, they were showing that teachers was down there, students was down there going off, man. I mean, just the violence that was going on in the schools. And it seemed like the number one thing that the teachers mainly wanted, they wanted the money too, but they really had an issue about the violence and the safety that goes on in the schools. In Akron, you guys have an elected school board, correct?
Yes,
so you have an elected school board. The mayor doesn't have control over the schools, but if you become mayor, I want to say, how would you use your platform as mayor to help improve what's going on in the schools?
Right. So first, we need to make sure that we have schools that are working for our kids, first and foremost. And I think with all of this that we've been talking about in Akron is, let's not forget about the main persons here, and that's our kids. Making sure that our kids are in a safe learning environment, because we've got a few that are wilding out, but they're making it bad for the kids who want to be there, who want to learn. But it also has to be a safe environment for those kids and for the teachers. And when you've got kids that are bringing guns to school, bringing gummies to school, bringing pepper spray to school, punching teachers, our kindergartners are the number one expelled and suspended grade in Akron Public Schools. What?
The kindergarten, they're the ones going off.
I mean, but the thing about it is, I think that you're talking about kids who they went from preschool half day. Now you got them sitting in school all day. Them kids don't understand that. So I think we have to do a better job of making sure that our babies understand that. They just not going in there punching teachers. They're going in there because they are dealing with anxiety that no one wants to talk about. Our kids have a lot of trauma and anxiety, probably from stuff going on at their homes that no one really wants to discuss or talk about.
But is it up to the schools? I mean,
no, we don't want the schools to be parents. That's not their job.
Okay.
But they need to make sure there's counselors in those schools, so they can have those conversations with those kids, because a lot of these kids are dealing with things at home that, they're being told, don't you tell what's going on in this house, and nobody's business, and our kids are struggling and they're acting out. And then we have the other component where if you have a kid who has a learning disability, what better way to keep you from having to expose your learning disability in the school? Act out.
That's correct.
Act out. Because you don't want nobody to know. And then the teachers are paying the price for it. So we have to make sure our schools are safe. Our teachers need to be paid more. I just sent a resolution in support of the Teachers Act, for all incoming teachers should have a starting salary of $60,000. In Akron, it's a little over 42. You have had to be a teacher in Akron 12 years before you even reach $60,000. And that to me is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. And we need to fix it. Now we're about to have metal detectors all the time in our schools. So now we're treating our schools and our kids almost like incarceration. But
not like they're going to work.
Yeah, that too.
When you go to the work, you got to.
Some of them you do. But I understand the metal detectors being there. We have them at City Hall now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like you going to work.
I mean, but you want to make sure it's a safe environment and a comfortable learning environment for everyone, from the bottom all the way up to the top. But that starts with making sure that you have a school board that works well with the superintendent, whomever that may be at this point. They started off rocky. It was a rocky transition anyway when they went through the whole interview process of who that person was going to be. Our mayor played a big role in that push. And as the mayor of the city of Akron, yes, I think we need to have input, but we also need to be respectful of the fact that the school board is elected just like I am. So, one of editorials saying that the school board leadership needs to resign, and you're about to be the mayor, you should call on them to resign. I said, that's for the voters to decide. That's not up to me. That's you. Now we're overstepping, because I said early on when they started having issues over at council, they passed a resolution saying that we should support our superintendent. And I said, wait a minute. We can't even get our own house in order. Are we trying to tell them what to do over at the school board? No, that's not how this should work. Yes, she deserved our support. Absolutely, she deserved it. But for us to step in and say, y'all need to do better, but we over here on council, we can't get along to save our life. To me, it just didn't even make any sense. And the review of her was harsh. And I know a lot of those school board members over there. I'm friends with a lot of them over there. And I told Dr. Akbar it was harsh. But he wasn't alone in that. They voted unanimously on that on that assessment, but he's getting the bigger weight of it because of his words. And his words were harsh. They were harsh. And he should have chose better. I wish he would have waited until at least June so we could try to do some things the right way to make sure that we're transitioning and making sure these teachers are okay. I hate the fact that she had to be faced with teachers threatening to go on strike in the midst of, there was talk about laying people off, and the teachers want to be safe. And then there was a 3% pay increase in there. And it was almost like her back was against the wall when she came in the door. And that was unfortunate for her.
Wow. Well, Councilwoman, I'm going to end it with this because I'm going to let you have the minute. We usually end our program where we let you guys, you have that camera there and you get a chance to talk to the millions of my viewers that watch my program and talk to them about a little bit about whatever you want to talk about. You can talk about your campaign, your thoughts, your group, how they can get in touch with you, how they can get in touch with you, your campaign. But I want you to think about this in this, and you take your time and do it because we're editing this. But I want you to go with, I know that the most important part of a city is, especially going into the leadership, is, people want to move into a community where you say there's safety, where the education is good, and there's some economic growth or development there that they can feel like the community has something to offer them. And right now, I know in the city of Akron, is just like all major cities, they're struggling with those things. And you got a police department that has this situation that happened with Jalen that's big, and you have that review board that you'll be dealing with as mayor. You also have the education piece, which is huge. Like I think the mere fact that you are a person who has the experience that you have, you could probably speak more to the parents, and hopefully in your role as mayor, they can look at that as a role model or something to do it, because like you say, the kids are coming to school with a lot of that, and it has to be somebody who has the compassion to understand that, but also has the wherewithal to try to fight to make a change in the school system, to put the programs and the things there, whether that's working with the county, whether it's working with the city or whoever, to bring in the resources that the children and the parents of those kids need in those schools so that the schools can work better. Other than that, it's the same old thing. I mean, all we're doing is paying the teachers more money to get beat up. You see what I mean? Yeah, we gave you a raise because you're going to deal with the same bull crap you've been dealing with. So we gave you a raise. So if we don't really deal with that problem, that's an issue. So I just know that your hands are full, and you got a lot on it. I think that you have the fighting energy to do it because you got to have thick skin, and definitely you got thick skin. Everything you done went through, you got to have thick skin. So I want to thank you for coming on our program with that. And with that, I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to let you have this camera here to say whatever you want. That camera right there, you can say whatever you want to say. Take your time and make sure you get everything in.
Right. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity. And for your listeners to learn a little more about me, I would encourage you first to, I mean, I could say mosleyformayor.com, and yes, that's there. And I want you to look at our platform and really see what our campaign is about. But me as a person, if you really want to know something about me as a person outside of just Googling me, you'll see the bad, but there's more good than bad, you know, just it's Google. That's how it is. But I have this book that's called From Teen Mom to Public Servant. And for like my young viewers, my young moms and my young dads, I think it's worth a read because it's on Amazon. It will give you some hope. And that's what I wrote the book, was to give people hope, especially those who come from neighborhoods like me, you know, a rough start like me. There's always promise. There's always promise in the problem. And just remember that. And if I'm fortunate enough to be the mayor of the city of Akron, I want my residents and especially our babies to know that I hear you. I've been listening for over the 9 years that I've been there. And even as a bailiff, I've listened to the issues that people in Akron and all parts of the community of Akron are facing. And we have to make sure that first and foremost, that we are taking care of our children, because our job is to make this place a better place for them when we leave here. And that is my priority, is to making sure that we put people first and making sure we do not forget about our babies. So again, you can log on to mosleyformayor.com to learn a lot more about my platform. But again, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you again. And everybody, that book, you can get it on Amazon, and I'm going to leave a link in our description where you can click on that to get more information about how you can register and volunteer and donate money to her campaign, as well as how you can get more information and read her book. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next program.
This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.